first, I also want to let you know that I truly appreciate you taking the time to be in this meeting and being open to try new things and be a part of this process. So let's see, let's get started here. Let's go to the first slide, Aubrey. We have a full agenda today, and between now and 7:15, we're going to get started with some introductions and a quick project update from David Peters, then dive into some lighting and sound design concepts with Jeff McGraw and Casey Hagerman, who are representing the design team. Our format will have two parts. We'll start with sharing information, then move to discussion so we can hear your ideas. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so I know some of you are new to Zoom, so I just want to give you some conference call tips. For those of you who are listening from phones, just be patient for a moment while I go through this part. For those of you joining on the computer, we want to make sure that you're comfortable with these conference tools. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Zoom meeting toolbar, working from the left to right. If you move your mouse over the toolbar, there is the audio, there is a video. I recommend you don't touch the audio because if it's working now, then I've found if you mess with it, it won't work anymore. And then there's the video you can control. Next to that, there's a share screen, which you won't need. And then there's a more option that shows participants. You may want to click on that to bring up that dialog box so you can see who else is in the meeting. There's a chat function that you will also want to bring up. You can message while you're watching the presentation, and I'll be keeping track of that. Oh, yes, I'm using chat. Nicely done there, Sarah. Oh, Jane. Sorry. One of these days I'm going to get it right. Okay. Thank you. And let's see. And if you wanted to leave the meeting, you can do that on that next little spot there that says leave meeting. But I hope you all will stay through the conference. For the best conference experience, we ask that when you're not speaking, you keep your mic muted and your webcam turned off. That way, if people don't have a strong signal, then it will help with the bandwidth. If you have a question or input during the initial presentation, please raise your hand. You can use the raise your hand tool, which is in the participants section. I'm going to try to zoom to it on mine so I can tell you exactly. If you're in the participants window, then at the bottom there should be a indication of invite, mute me, or raise hand. Oh, looks like Aubrey's raising her hand. Just to see if everybody has that on theirs. If you have if you can find your raise hand, feel free to do that now. All right, yeah, good. Yep, got it. All right, cool. We'll follow the presentation times with comments and questions. We'll have a check-ins for those who are listening by phone. I don't think I see anybody who is actually on the call by phone. Is anybody calling by phone that they don't have video capability? You just let me know. You can unmute yourself.
It looks like everybody's on video.
Oh, okay, everybody's on video, great. All right, now to test those tools, I'm gonna call you by a name and ask you to briefly introduce yourself and let us know if you are a Zoom novice or a Zoom expert or somewhere in between. I think in this time we're all getting a little bit better at all of our tools that don't require us to be meeting in person, but I'm going to start with Jeff McGraw because I know he's got it down a little bit better. So Jeff.
Yes, I'm Jeff McGraw. I am an architect and the site design lead for this discussion today. And I am not a novice at Zoom. I'm actually very poor at it. Casey, you'll see some tools and tricks as he introduces himself.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Alan Armstrong.
Hi, everybody. I am Alan Armstrong. I'm on the design team. I'm one of the architects as well. So I'll be helping Jeff and Casey out as we move through this process. And I'm looking forward to this chat today. This is my third or fourth Zoom meeting. I think that still makes me a novice. So I'll do my best. And I'm going to turn off my camera to save that bandwidth. But it was nice meeting you all. And thanks for your comments.
All right. Casey Hagerman.
Hi, I'm Casey. I'm with MWA Architects. I work with Jeff and Alan. I'm an architect and project manager for the design team, so I'll be on this from beginning to end. As far as Zoom, the coolest thing I found is the virtual backgrounds. You can upload a picture, you can go anywhere you want on Zoom, I guess. So that's over by the video settings if you're interested. So fun times.
Yeah, very nice. I like that. All right, let's see. We have Charlie.
Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm kind of in between with Zoom. I do all of my college classes at home from Zoom, so I'm kind of getting used to it. And I'm just one of the site advisor group members.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Mike Cohen. Mike, you're muted. Can you unmute him, Aubrey?
You hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah, this is Mike Callen. I live on Carpenter Lane. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I've never used this before. My wife is helping me.
You're doing great. And I'm going to say Mike Cowan instead of Cohen next time. All right. And your wife is she on a separate line?
No, she's
Rosemary?
next to me.
Okay, so Rosemary, can you?
He tuned in on the computer, so my name might be there too.
Okay.
We don't have a camera on our computer
Okay.
and don't have a speaker, so we're just using my phone.
Okay, well, great. Nice to have you both.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Daniel Newberry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I am the executive director of the Johnson Creek Watershed Council and a member of the site group, stakeholder group, whatever it's called.
Great. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah. Oh, on SAG. Okay, I'm just gonna read her. I don't know if she's not has that. Okay, let's see. Jane Whitehead, but really Sarah, on the site advisory group. Since January, new to Zoom, not computers, can handle it. I will be using chat. No one needs to see me. I've been working in the garden all day. Good to hear from you all. Oh, thanks, Sarah. All right. Sean, are you available?
Yes. I don't know if you can. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So you're a little soft, but that's okay.
Okay. You can't see me though, huh?
I can see you too.
Okay.
You got a very nice ceiling.
Okay. Oh, that's, yeah, our home in the mountains here. Yeah, Sean Narrison with Surface Nursery. So we're farming the land and farming the land around it. And I've been on the committee since the beginning.
Great. And this is your first time on Zoom, right?
This is, yes, first time on Zoom.
All right, cool. Happy to have you. Let's see. I see that Pat and I'm guessing Dean Walter are online too. We're just going around the room. Pat and Dean, if you just want to introduce yourself, can you unmute them? Aubrey? Oh, I see they're chatting in here. Dean and Pat here. Yep, we're here. Been involved since the beginning. And I'm guessing, I know that you're not exactly new to Zoom, so we will, we're glad to have you here. Did I call everybody? Did I miss anybody? Oh, we downloaded all of the information from the website. Great. Anybody else that I missed?
But if I introduce myself.
Oh, sorry, David. Dave Peters.
I'm here tonight too. Dave Peters, the program director with the Water Bureau, and I do want to say thank you all for being with us on this beautiful evening, and look forward to talking with you some more about these subjects this evening. So thanks.
And I'll note that Dave is a pro at Zoom. He's teaching us all a little bit every day.
I was going to say that I think I'm just a bit above novice, because even though I'm on Zoom, Teams, or WebEx, or there's another one, 8 hours a day. There's so many nuances between them all that I just have the basics down. So I can't do the background thing yet, as you can tell. So.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's the thing. We've all been at the program office. We've been all using all sorts of tools. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is trying to figure out which ones do what. All right. So if you are not muted, please mute yourself so that way we can conserve bandwidth. And if you're have your video on, you can turn that off as well. All right. Let's see what we have next on the list. Can you go to the next slide there? Okay, yeah, we have a few of you have been to the tours of the 2 different water treatment facilities. There was one in Wilsonville and one out in Forest Grove. And we just want to get a little bit of your feedback on what surprised you, what stood out about any of those facilities that maybe you have questions about, or you would like to see implemented in our facility. Anybody want to raise their hand and volunteer some information? All right, not seeing any hands here. So in November, we were at the Wilsonville facility, and I know quite a few of you were there, and then at the Joint Water Commission, they had a pretty nice presentation as well. Is there anything about the sound or the lighting that anybody noted that, since that's what we're going to be talking about this evening? Oh, I see a hand. Sean.
Yeah, what I noticed about it is, other than the room where all the big pumps were, I thought it was very quiet. I was expecting more of some humming noises, and it's just not what I expected. It was actually a lot more quiet than I pictured. And especially with the one you guys are putting in, it won't have any pumps. I just pictured something very quiet. And I was amazed at that.
Great. Charlie, you have a little something to say about your visit to the different facility?
Yeah, I went to the Wilsonville one, and I agree, it was totally quiet, and I really appreciated that. And on top of that, I believe either their lights were on timers or motion censored. I don't recall what it was, but they did have ways to make sure that they weren't using extra light that wasn't needed. And so that was really appreciated.
Cool. I see Pat Walter says the buildings to alleviate the sound was impressive. Anything that you didn't like? I know when I was going through there, the Joint Water Commission, there were things that didn't look so nice, But overall, I was impressed with it. But is there anything that's struck you as odd or not good? I remember it was raining too. I didn't like that part, but I see Charlie's hand is still raised, but
I remember I jinxed us that day and said we were going to have no rain. But
yeah, then of course. Sarah says that she sent feedback to Ken and Mark, Jeff and Jude and John Johnson, but the decibel level was still around 70, if I recall. Mark measured it. Anybody from the project team recall the measurements that were taken out there?
well, Mark had his cell phone measuring it when we were standing on top of the intake structure. I think he's showing it right there in that picture that's up on the screen. And that was one of the probably noisier parts besides the pump station, is when we were standing right on top. But those that were there may recall that as soon as we walked down around the rest of the plant, we couldn't hear it at that level anymore. So I think those are some of the things that will get discussed tonight as we begin to talk about sound and how to mitigate sound.
Right.
I think it was around 70 as we're standing right there.
Okay. Pat Walter says the outside of the facility looked a stark gray and very uninviting. I agree, Pat. I know the outside of our facility will look much better. Yeah, we do have some options for how this facility will look, and further down the road, we will definitely be getting into that and what's available. Oh, there we go. There's a lot here. Okay. Sarah says the Forest Grove site has both relatively old and recently completed construction. The older filtration construction is obviously noisier and less efficient than the newer. Will the new site also need standalone electric generator and placement of such in relationship to the facility? I noted in the prior conversations writings as the upgrade already made at the Dodge Park Altman Road PGE power station. Though not demonstrated, we were told the outside noise level when running at full capacity was 70. Even that current noise level of existing activity are significantly lower than 70 decibels. Would prefer to keep those levels in mid for post-construction operational level. There is some limited backup processing now that the new construction has been completed in Forest Grove. There is no architectural aesthetic value of the facility site, and because of the large acreage surrounding it for the ponds and its distance from the location in relation, oops, sorry, this keeps moving around. In relation to any population, none was intended by all appearances. It's a lot of feedback. And I'm in terms of the sound, I know that Casey and Jeff will can address some of those issues as we move along. Pat says was interested. Oh, did you want to say something, Dave?
This is Jeff.
Oh, Jeff, okay.
I was just going to respond. Some of those,
yeah.
Hopefully we'll have less questions at the end because we're going to get into some specifics tonight. Yeah. So I'd be interested to see if we've actually responded to some of those questions. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Pat says was interesting to walk outside to be able to see how the water cleared as it was filtered through the different mediums. All right. Sarah says, I did not notice accommodation for ADA for guests and for workers or for workers. Now that you mentioned, I don't think that I had noticed that either. So I'm pretty sure our facility will be required to have those sort of accommodations. Am I correct, David?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Well, that was a lot of great feedback. Like I mentioned earlier, we will talk about more of those sort of details as we move along through this process. So how is this, or actually, let's go to the next slide here. Okay, yeah. So we gave you a survey a couple weeks ago after we had to cancel our last meeting, and asked for your feedback on ways to stay in touch. We sent you some information through email, through the feedback that we received from you. And then we had you fill out a survey based on that information and just an individual opinion. And now we are here having this conference call. And I just wanted to check in to see how those first two steps, I know we're in this final step now, but if those first two steps work for you, if anybody has any input on that. Feel free to raise your hand or chat. All right, there should be a thumbs up icon too, if you wanted to try that. Thumbs up or a clap. Oh, there's a new message in here, let's see. Okay, we need to remind you to save answers before submitting. Is that on the survey that you're talking about? All right, so on the survey, don't forget to save your answers before submitting. In terms of the survey too, you know, all of this information we will be posting on our website and remain transparent. Your names won't be associated with it, but we will have a summary of the surveys that we've had you fill out, and then we will post that onto our website. So you can refer to it later if you like. Anybody else have thoughts on the format of getting material and responding to that material? Oh. All right. Well, we want to keep this party moving. So let's see what the next slide is. Oh, it's David's turn for a project update.
Hey, well, once again, glad to be here with you tonight, and I hope this is finding you and your families doing well. I realize it's an interesting time that we're working through, but at the same time, we really want to be with you and keep you up to date of the things that are continuing to progress at our program office. What's that, a week and a half ago, we shared with you a draft of our filtration facility overview. I realize that was a big document that summarized much of the work that had been done to document the work that had been done after our council session last November. So that's information that kind of provides some conceptual ideas on what the types of things we're thinking about for the filtration facility site. And that's going to be a document that will be updated to create a project definition report later this summer. And that will include pipeline information. So that kind of leads into the third bullet item here, which was conducting field investigations in the project area. Over the last 2 weeks, you've probably seen some folks out in the neighborhood. We did some drilling on the filtration site. We've had consultants and surveyors that have been going along some proposed pipeline alignments and gathering information about the history, the environmental elements, and just different types of reviews to get us the information we need as we look forward to selecting pipeline alignments And so all of that will get drafted into a document that we'll have later this summer, and we'll have more information to bring back to you to talk about those subjects going forward also. And so we realize that filtration facility overview is a big document, and that's part of the reason we set up the meetings the way we have, is so that we can take pieces of that document and have individual conversations about them. So two of those subjects in the document are the sound and lighting, and we know those were key issues. You had identified it as a group, and so we're breaking those out to have this conversation, and we'd like to continue conversations like that to help you work through all that information that's in that document. Two other things that are going on. This past week, we submitted a loan application to the Environmental Protection Agency to get a low interest loan through what's called the WIFIA program, which is the Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act. And so that application is currently starting to be processed by the EPA, and can potentially fund up to 49% of our project costs for this facility, again, with low interest loans. And right now, with Treasury rates the way they are, those loan rates are really good and will make an impact on water rates. And then last November, we approved a contract through City Council for our design consultants, and we got them started work in January on the pre-design work. So we've been doing lots of online workshops, talking about more details related to the subjects that are in that filtration facility overview. And so there'll be a lot more information to come out of those efforts and from those consultants as we go forward. I think you've already met Jude Grounds and Mark Graham. So they're the key project managers for that team. Then tonight we're here with Jeff and Casey, also part of that design team. So we're starting down that path, starting to think about the design of the facility, and we'll be keeping you up to date as that moves forward. So that's just a brief overview, but wanted to keep you up to date on that progress.
Thanks, Dave. I think I mentioned it already, but your input is shaping this roadmap of our journey to build this filtration facility. This is a table of the responses that we received when we first started meeting, what was important to you in terms of this project. And we know traffic was the #1 item, and we will definitely be talking about that. And I think that's actually next, the next set of information that we will be sending out. Let's see. Sarah says, can you please give more specific details on recent PWB surveying and marking along Dodge Park Boulevard, Lusted Road, and specifically along Mayberry Lane, which runs parallel to Lusted Road in Clackamas County? Well, I do want to keep focused on the topic tonight, but I'll let David give it just a quick little snippet of what we're doing out there.
Yeah, I know a little bit about that, and they are out there marking our existing easements that are just those are just south of Lusted Road and across Dodge Park. Part of what the surveyors are doing, and that's extended a little farther in terms of distance, is they're trying to reconcile their survey with the county records. And I know Lusted Road is not in the exact spot that the county records say it is, and so they've been trying to reconcile all of that information, is why they've had to extend the surveys a bit beyond just the existing properties we own, to make sure that we are on the properties that we do have access rights to. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Oh. Okay, let's scroll up to get this. Oh, okay, so there's a question from, first Sarah says, understood, have spoken to Doug, great. Daniel Newberry, the section on light and acoustics traffic in the document appears to be dealing only with the ongoing operations post-construction. In the last site advisory group meeting, many community members seem to be more interested in these issues during construction, which will likely extend over multiple years. Can you please address that in greater detail in the document? We will, I know that Jeff and Casey will be addressing construction and operation issues, and you can ask more questions about that after they give their little spiel. Then if there's any questions that they haven't answered, then we can get into more specifics with that. All right, next let's move us over to Jeff to start talking about light and sound.
Good evening again, folks. Let's see. Again, I'm Jeff McGraw, and I will be the site design lead for this project. So you are, in fact, now talking to the design team. I'll be coordinating feedback directly to the design team. Next. So thanks for filling out your survey, questions so far. We'll be addressing both of these questions regarding light measurement and tools we have to model lighting in the slides coming up. But these are two of the things you really wanted to know about in the survey results that came in the last couple of days. Next, please. So slide 11 lists lighting design objectives sent to you. Generally, we have to balance building code requirements with dark sky requirements with safety on site. It's a bit of a challenge. Our lighting needs are listed to the right in terms of where we anticipate lighting needing to be, but our general strategy related to neighbors at the site is to really shield or diffuse the light, keep the lighting sources internal to the property. You can go back to these if people have questions, but I know this was issued and I prefer not to just read line by line. Next, please. So slide 14 shows pictures from your site. As you can see, despite some of the unshielded lighting fixtures in the upper right, light sources in the neighboring properties, this is a very dark place at night. And looking west from this property is the lights of Portland as well as some stars. You can also see in the lower right-hand column, can everybody see that? There's a picture of the JWC plant in Hillsborough, right? And they were nice enough to share a picture of the lighting there. And even though that is an older plant with many generations of lighting, you can tell a lot of that light is visible. And even some of that light is compliant with dark sky requirements, and you can still see it from the side. So we're pretty concerned about that, and we're coming up with strategies to shield that light. Next slide. So Multnomah County has a dark sky ordinance. It really is subjective. We have building codes and OSHA, which relate to safety, that we must meet, minimum lighting levels for operator safety. And although some of the full cutoff fixtures that are in the lower right are prescribed in this ordinance, we need to think about blocking lights from neighboring properties with buildings, berms, landscaping, and other means. We recognize simply complying with this ordinance will not address the dark sky conditions, the existing conditions on site. Next. So potential strategies. Some of these potential strategies are in alignment with feedback we received from you in the surveys. Lower left-hand picture there, there's an example of bollard lighting or low-level lighting. That represents about a ½ foot candle in terms of measurements. But obviously, putting the fixtures that are in the other pictures on this this panel, if they're raised high on the site or if they like parking lots and that sort of thing, I think you're going to have an issue with that, and so are we. So we are going to be concentrating on using landforms, landscaping, to shield or hide these lighting sources. Next. So this is slide 15, and they are the survey results thus far. And based on your survey input, the top survey result was only light the areas, you know, where we need it. It was identified as the most important strategy, and we discussed placement of fixtures and no brighter than necessary. But as far as motion sensors go, not sure that's a strategy that we would employ at this time, simply because just about anything, you know, the wind blowing or branches or wildlife will set that off. So if it's really desirable from a neighborhood standpoint, we can of course talk about it, but it was one of the top results, and I think you're going to find that that may not be the best way to go so far. Next. So I want to leave plenty of time to discuss sound, but before we move to the next segment, quickly go over some of the other comments and ideas shared during the survey. We've addressed seeing things and cutting off the fixtures. We've addressed motion sensors, the shining down or dark sky ordinance. And so there was another page, so let's go to the next page. And we sort of paraphrased some of these. Building low to the ground. We have a building height limit of 35 feet across the site. We have some existing topography, which will help us with this idea. We have a hydraulic grade, which explains water coming into this project and how low the actual structures need to be. We also have the potential of putting roof forms on some of the basins. You've been walking around some of the basins at Wilsonville and Joint Water Commission plant, considering covering some of those basins for environmental conditions for the water. And that's going to give us some better ideas and some better use of interior light fixtures as opposed to exterior. So leaving this subject for a moment, we share your concerns with the survey, and this is sort of a good start as we get started with the official Good Neighbor Plan and start taking in your comments and incorporating them into the design. Casey? Or should we stop there and I forget, Bonita, should we stop and ask for any comments at this time?
Yeah, let's pause for them and see if anybody has any questions. You can raise your hand or you can use the chat. Okay, well then let's move on. Oh, I see Sarah has a question. She's got her hand raised and she says, how tall are the Lake Oswego buildings? 35 feet is 3 stories. Is that from ground up?
Yeah, it really depends on where it's measured from. We have a very similar code requirement at Lake Oswego, but the houses and the neighbors were a lot closer to those plant edges. Not only that, the hydraulic grade was such that the basins were quite a bit off the ground, as you recall, or if you've been to this plant and walked around, you're on a platform above the ground at least 8 to 10 feet. So I think our basins are going to be buried a bit more just to respond to the level of the water as it comes into this property.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Jeff? All right. Casey, you're up.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. Again, my name is Casey Hagerman, architect and project manager for MWA. And I'm going to be talking about acoustic concerns. So based on the survey input we got, we'll spend some time talking about how sound mitigation measures are selected. And we'll also try to address specific questions about whether sound will be 24/7, as well as if terrain and landscaping can help mitigate sound impacts. Next slide. So as you saw in the information packet, we expect sound sources from this project to include truck traffic, both during construction and after the plant is operational. And our acoustic design objectives include reducing the neighborhood impacts from sound, meeting the code requirements for Multnomah and Clackamas counties, and supporting a safe environment both for the operators of the plant and any visitors who should come. So one of our common practices to achieve these objectives is to address sound as well as at the site perimeter to capture any sound that may have gotten past the source. And we'll discuss those strategies in a few minutes. Next, please. So this facility site is in Multnomah County and borders Clackamas County to the south. So we'll need to meet code for sound limits for both counties, and the code differs slightly. So sound is measured in decibels, and to assess if we comply with the limits of the code, those decibels can be measured in Clackamas County. You can measure those decibels at the property line of any property that has an overnight accommodation. But if your overnight accommodation is in Clackamas County, then that sound measurement will occur 3 feet from a door or window of that overnight accommodation. So a little bit different measuring techniques to prove if we're meeting the code requirements or not. And there are some exemptions to the limits of sound in both counties, and this occurs if there's emergencies and during temporary construction activities. So what is it like now compared to what the sound levels may be like after this facility is built? So next slide, please. So we recognize this site in this beautiful location is in a very quiet area, both during the day and the night. And so we will need to find ways to minimize facility sounds for the surrounding community. We took initial measurements in April of 2019 along the property line of our site. And this diagram lets us know that on average during the daytime, we had a 45 decibel level, and at night a 43 decibel level. So the code limits are a little higher than that. And so there's a difference between what we measured and what the code allows us to have. And for example, during the day, that difference is 15 decibels. So what does that mean? That is basically the difference in the perceived volume of sound between the noises you may hear in a library setting versus what the sound level is during a normal conversation. And so that represents that difference between 60 decibels and 45 decibels is that kind of level. How do we address the sounds coming from the site so that we keep them as low as possible and definitely not to go over the sound limits? Next slide. So the information you reviewed and commented on for the survey included this list of potential strategies to reduce off-site impacts. So these fall into the two basic categories of during construction and during operations. And we know from experience that the temporary construction sounds will likely be greater than the sounds during operation. The stories you told about your tour group, your tours to the plants, help to illustrate that once this plant is operational, noise is less of a factor than during construction. So we'll be working with the contractor who's going to be on board later this year to determine the most useful strategies that can be deployed during construction. We want to develop ideas with you guys and build on some of these initial thoughts and take those to the contractor and work through those. Will there be sound 24/7 at this plant after it's operational? To some extent, yes. This is a round-the-clock filtration plant, but there's many more strategies we can use to mitigate that sound. And what we want to focus on during construction is obviously defining when construction happens and the frequency of truck traffic and those impacts that are going to really be felt by the community. Next slide, please. So based on your survey input, of the strategies we initially proposed, the one that got the most positive response was limiting deliveries to daytime hours. This would be something we could apply both to construction and operation phases. Defining the daytime work hours, using temporary noise walls or berms, and upgrading door seals and optimizing truck traffic were also important strategies to implement. And so we'll be looking at how to better define those and dial those in. We will be working with our acoustic engineers and mechanical engineers to select the most efficient and quiet equipment. Things like HVAC units that may have to be on roofs. We would want to make sure those fan noises do not cause excessive sound. And we'll prioritize managing those sounds at the source, both to protect the operators and to protect the neighbors. So we will be, as we move through the design process over the next couple of years, we will be doing some acoustic modeling with the acoustic engineers to better understand these impacts and really dial in the sources of sound and the ways that this sound may travel, and then put the solutions in the best locations to mitigate that sound. I'd like to, let's go to the next slide. Let's do that. So just to note some other questions and comments we received on the survey, the priority for most folks who responded is during the construction period, and we acknowledge that and want to work really closely with you guys to solve those issues with a goal of making it as quiet as possible. Hopefully this, is achievable and meets everyone's needs, and we can find out the best strategy to do that. There was a question about landscaping and berms. How can this be used to help with sound? And these are good strategies, both for the perimeter of the site, where it will also help with blocking views and blocking light. We think that landscaping and berms are gonna serve us well on this project for many reasons. And so is the existing topography. As Jeff mentioned, we have some low areas that we're going to try and prioritize those low areas to put facilities so that we can, we don't want to build the tallest thing on the top of the hill, obviously. And so we're going to be really dialing that in with our civil and landscape architects to best site the facility to make the most of the topography. So I want to stop there. It's a lot of information and get your comments, ask if there's anything that needs to be clarified, or let's discuss some new ideas.
Does anybody have a question or a comment? You can raise your hand or you can type into the chat. All right, not seeing any hands raised. Can we go back 2 slides, Aubrey, or maybe just 1 slide? Yeah, to this, the ranking potential sound mitigations. Those top 3 are pretty close, tied in together. Does anybody have any comments on to why they picked one over the other? I know it's really tough when you have to rank things, and a lot of times you might feel like, I want it all, I want it all. That's my number 1 choice, to have all those things. But maybe there's something that really worked for you about something, if you had a preference. Anybody? All right, well, how about any other suggestions that people might have for sound mitigation strategies? Maybe something that you've heard of or seen used before? No?
Sean?
Yes, I was talking to Bonita earlier today about the backup alarms on dump trucks and whatever's going on up there. I was at a construction site about a month ago, and it seemed like at one time or another it was always a dump truck or something backing up, and that alarm noises or the beeping was just constant. And it's kind of a high-pitched constant noise. And I notice you're talking as an alternative flaggers. Can you explain to me what that's about, or how you do that?
Yes, that is a strategy where additional personnel would be hired and be on site. And instead of having backup alarms, which are there to, notify someone who's on the ground that the truck is backing up, that you would actually have dedicated personnel that are flagging, clearing the zone for the truck to back up into. There are also alternative mechanical devices that don't emit such a high frequency alarm that are now on the market, and that high pitch frequency is often harder to mitigate and more annoying for folks. And so low frequencies are easier to handle, and things like berms are good for that. But for things like backup alarms, we'll have to work with the contractor to see what kind of devices they've used and what alternatives they're willing to do. And we know that backup flaggers is not a fail-safe for safety, but it is for the sound aspect.
Good to know. And bring up Pat and Dean, they had said for us, because we live immediately to the east, we're very concerned about truck traffic, construction sound, and also berms and shrubbery between our property and the facility. I just want to clarify with that, Pat and Dean, if you do want shrubs and berms, or you just want to have input on what those look like. Oh, we like to have shrubs and berms to cut down the sound. And it sounds like that's possible, yeah?
I'm in there. We've spent, last week we spent some time walking around the site in the rain, and it was a beautiful place regardless. And we took so many pictures from just about every vantage point, every house viewpoint, every berm, and it was really informative. And so I think the one thing to realize with sound in general is that landscaping, although it's counterintuitive, will not help us with sound mitigation. And anything that contains mass, a sound wall, a berm, will in fact either absorb sound or reflect sound. So something with mass works a lot better. We also, just so everybody understands, this site has a lot of rolling hills, and essentially just putting in a Nike berm around this project will not look natural either. So I think we have to get pretty creative about the nature of any berms or landforms to hide structures or to mitigate sound so that it looks natural to the place. And so we consider that a pretty good challenge right now.
And just to clarify, Jeff's comment, he said Nike berm because the Nike campus has a very large berm around their facility. So if you have an opportunity to go check that out, it's over off of Murray, I believe.
It is.
But you can see how that looks and get an idea of
Yes.
what a large berm looks like.
It's a beautiful berm, Benita, but it would not necessarily make our site look like it belongs there.
Looks like we had a comment from Daniel Newberry. I like Casey's comment about fans pointed upwards. Are there any more ideas like that, orienting the sound, making machinery in such a way to lower noise?
Yeah, that's a good idea, or a good question, Dan. What we've done in other places like Lake Oswego, where there is a lot of equipment and neighbors are very close by, is to actually put all of that equipment in penthouses, essentially enclose it in a room where it's appropriate to actually completely mitigate that sound and deal with it internally. So we have that option for some equipment. There may be some equipment that may not be able to be fully enclosed, in which case we have exhaust baffles that can be used to capture that noise and dampen it before it goes into the atmosphere. And it might be another opportunity to locate equipment on site next to a noise wall or a berm, more internally placed, to block that noise as close to the source as possible before it gets into the atmosphere. So those are some things I'm thinking we can employ.
Righty, that's good tips there. Pat and Dean said, I've heard that berms create a lot of weight and could cause slides as our area. Is that true, since we are just above Dodge Park Boulevard?
Yeah, we know there's that edge along Dodge Park Boulevard that drops off is a seismically sensitive zone, and there is a buffer that we need to abide by. There's a setback that we'd want to make sure we don't put anything that's going to destabilize the soil or cause any extra erosion. We are looking at the potential for earthquake and its effects on this site. And that's going to go into not only our facility design, but also our site and landscape design. So that is a really good thing to point out, and it's on our radar, and we're going to engineer it so that it doesn't cause more danger. Hopefully, maybe we can even mitigate some of the danger.
All right. Thank you for that answer. Sean, you still have your hand raised. Do you have a new question, or is that that your hand is raised from the last question?
Oh, I didn't realize it was raised. Okay, I didn't have another question.
No problem. Happens all the time. Anybody else have any questions about sound? We can also go back to lighting if anybody has any thoughts on that. All right, well, we're getting close to the end of our presentation and meeting today. So can you move over to the next slide, Aubrey?
There's a question. How about lighting
there's,
for construction?
oh, there we go. Dan Newberry. How about lighting during construction?
I don't know. At this point, we have a contractor coming on who's in the capacity of a CMGC contracting method. In other words, we're going to get the construction manager before we get the general contractor, which is the way this kind of project should go. So we have the opportunity to discuss design ideas and earlier in the design. And that is certainly a concern at this point in terms of where the lighting is, it's more about the hours of operation here in the Pacific Northwest as to when lighting would be needed. So that is a good question when that contractor is selected and gets on board and we may even use that question for selection of the contractor just to see how creative they are. But, but it's not something that we can answer right now.
I really like that idea. Let's ask them that question. We might come up with some other questions to ask them. All right. Anybody else? Oh, how about, there's sometimes construction sites have lighting on all night. That sounds unpleasant. Lighting for securing equipment on the site. Do you have anything about that, Jeff? Question about lighting for securing equipment?
Securing equipment. Most of the equipment we have is really going to be indoors. And so even things like emergency generators are going to be either in an acoustic isolated box or they're going to be in the building. I'm not sure that we're going to have lighting construction equipment. Let's see. Jane says construction equipment. Gotcha. Yeah, that's a concern. Contractors are pretty fussy these days about retaining secure edges on their construction site and prohibiting people from getting to things they can walk off during the evening hours. That's been a problem. So, yep, that's another chain link, etc. I'm reading the questions as they come in.
So the idea that I think she's presenting is that if we put a chain link fence around the facility or the construction site, we could possibly eliminate or at least minimize some of that nighttime lighting. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, I think the contractor is going to recommend that anyway. Ideally, it's something that that is discussed with the design team and with the neighbors before they just put it up. So we're going to be working with the contractor on that. Like
yes,
CMPC.
like this. Yeah. Anybody else have some thoughts on that? Preferring to have the site secured versus having lights on at night? I just want to clarify, we're not making any decisions here. I just want to get your opinion on these things as we bring on our design contract or construction contractor over the next couple months. All right. Anybody have any other thoughts? Anything that you want more detail on or clarity based on the information that was shared today, or even if you had something that you had a question about when you're looking through the slides before doing survey? Pat and Dean Walters say, will the facility have a fence around it after the facility is completed?
This is
David, maybe. No?
Yeah, I can answer that, or Dave.
Yeah.
David,
Okay.
you want to start?
Yeah. I'd say go ahead, Jeff, because I think that's linked to your next topic.
Okay.
In a future meeting, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the next topic will be kind of what are the edges of this place look like, and what are the access options that we have. And of course, security is going to be a big issue. We do want to keep people from just walking into the site, but we also recognize that we have quite a buffer between what is potentially going to be facilities and what is going to be the edges, and we're going to try to maintain that buffer. And within that buffer, there has to be something that stops people, whether that could be at the top, at the bottom of a ditch, like a ha-ha or something like that, or that buffer actually is the edge of a structure or a building. We always prefer, nice edges of buildings to any fences. And so on the Lake Oswego project, we use that strategy quite a bit, whereby the fences sort of spanned between the buildings, and the building edges were quality materials and brick and landscaping right up to them, so that it worked out. It looked far less secure, but in the end, the plant was still secure. So we used a number of different strategies for that, rather than just fencing around the entire site and calling it a secure perimeter. So that's part of the creative team that we have here, working towards a solution that's really tailored towards this place.
Sounds really interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that when you talk about it in a couple weeks. Let's see, anybody else have any questions? Right, next slide. All right, discussion format feedback. As we're closing out this meeting, we want to ask you about what you thought about this format, what went well, what could have gone better, any suggestions you might have for the next time. Zoom work for you, or you would like to try a different format? Would you like to just meet and stand 6 feet apart? What are your thoughts on this format? How is that working for you? Pat and Dean says it works for them.
Bonita, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if you could tell if my hand was up or down.
Oh,
I'm just
there you go, say.
He was talking about fencing, and
Oh,
I've been
yeah.
farming that property for, I want to say 25 to 30 years, and I don't know if you've noticed, but on the north end we put up a elk fence that's almost a mile long, and the elk herd from Oxbow Park comes up there, and they do a lot of damage, let alone the deer that come up. But there is an elk herd that comes up, and there'll be like 40 of them, and they'll just run through our fields and just basically destroy everything in their path. So there is that thought on the north end that there has to be some kind of barrier, or those elk will be there all the time.
It's a good point, says Pat and Dean Walter. Jeff, are you still there?
I am.
Yeah. It's something you can cover next time when we talk about the
Absolutely. Here's what we're doing. The last couple of meetings we've had a lot of great input in the form of these little metal stands, and what we're doing is we're building kind of a map of this area, not just the site, but this area as to where's the schools, where's the roads, where's the entry points. Also feedback from various neighbors in terms of wildlife. So this is really good. I'm not exactly sure where that north fence is, but I'm going to be looking for it now, and we'll put it on that map. So all of this stuff is going to influence where facilities are and how we deal with the edges and security options. So thank you.
Right. All right. I'll check for some hands again here. Let's scroll through here. Sarah has something to say. You can check with the Port of Portland as how they deal with wildlife and their resources. resources. I'm okay with this format. Right. Thank you, Sarah, for that input. I'm sure Jeff is making note of that.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else here? Just taking a quick look. All right, so what's next on that slideshow? Oh, it's what's next. That's what's up. Okay, looking ahead at what's next, I'll be in touch with you the next couple weeks to share 2 more information packets and get your feedback online. Then we're planning to regroup for the web conference on the scheduled meeting day in May. Does that work well for people to keep continuing with this meeting day and time, or would you want to try something different? All right, works for Pat and Dean.
Works for me.
As well. Oh, thank you, Mike. Dan's good. Sarah's good until we can meet face to face. Hopefully that will be sometime in this year. It's been an interesting time. And Charlie says, yes, good. All right. Well, there are a few people that weren't here. Oh, sorry. I think
Oh, it works for me too. I like this, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Sean. So we'll keep moving on with this. There's a few people that weren't here this time, so I'll be checking in with them to make sure that this is a format that works for them too. We will be posting some of this information on our website. Our goal is to try to post it within a week, what your responses are and the process that we're going through. And then we will be sending you more information. I believe traffic and access is the next batch of information we'll be sending you. So looking forward to getting your feedback on that. Otherwise, I'm going to turn this over to David. Do you have any final words?
Well, I would just like to thank everyone for being out tonight. I know it's we're all going through challenging times, and hopefully this might be a little bit of a distraction from everything else that's going on. And so we appreciate you joining us. And I would encourage you to, if you have thoughts or ideas on how we can continue improving these to make it better for you, in terms of either the content we're providing or the way that you're providing feedback, we'd love to hear more. We hope you'll be flexible with us. We're learning these systems as we go, and we'd love to continue finding ways to improve and provide the information that will help share what we're doing, what we're thinking about, and get your ideas and thinking into this process also. So we would just really would like to continue achieving that even in this challenging time. And so please share with us any other thoughts and ideas that you have as we go along, as we'd love to continue to improve on this. But thank you so much for being out and participating this evening.
Yes, thank you. Oops, myself. Okay. Sarah had made a comment to pre-submit questions via email to Benita for distribution to presenters. Absolutely. Anything, anytime you have questions, doesn't even have to be related to the presentations or the packets of information that you have received. Email me, call me. I'm happy to find answers available for you. Will the slideshow be available? Yes, we will post that on our website as well. Dan. Anybody else have any questions before we sign off? All right, stay safe and be well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.